So 5 5 300 to 1,000 at the bike.
Hmm.
Yep.
And then I'm at the cutoff with pocket queens. Oh, one queen of spades, one queen of hearts.
So it gets folded to you.
Or there's two limps in front of me.
Okay,
And then,
let's start with how deep the effective stacks are.
okay, so right now I have about 1,600.
Okay.
And it gets to me with two limps. I make it 30 since the standard race size is $20.
Yeah, I like it. So you're in the
And
cutoff with Queen
mhm,
of Spades, Queen of Hearts. Is that what you said?
correct.
Okay, to 30. Okay.
And the person next to me, the button,
Hmm.
I think he's like a young Caucasian male. He has a backpack, so I think he's regular or
Oh, one
maybe
of these backpack
plays for a
kids.
living.
Just because someone has a backpack doesn't necessarily mean they're good, but okay, that's a
Okay.
good description. Yeah.
He makes almost like an instant call. I put out the 30 and he calls right away.
Okay.
And then folds around to the button. Button makes the call, or not the button. Big blind makes the call, and then the
Hmm.
two limps make the call.
All right, a good old 1 2 3 4 5-way pot, right? Two limpers, so you get
Right.
four opponents. Yeah. So the pot's like gonna be 150. By the way, like for example, I don't know if you've ever played the 5 5 game at Commerce with the restricted buy-in. So Commerce and the bike, excuse me, Commerce and Hollywood Park, it's 300 to 500, 5 5, right?
Right.
The bike is 300 to 1,000, as is Hustler, and then I don't know, Hawaiian Garden's got some other sort of weird thing
600.
going. 600. Okay, so this is not, this is not a typical setup for any 5 5 game because we were talking about that previous caller where it could be very easily everyone starts with 500. There's two limps, you make it 30, and you get this exact same action where the pot's now 150 and people only have 470 left in their stack or shorter. And that's why it gets a little bit treacherous when you play in these sort of live capped games with large pre-flop sizing and with a lot of multi-way. At least here you've got some stack depth, but it looks like the pot's 150, right?
Right.
Okay.
And it goes five ways to the flop. It comes ace of clubs,
Mm-hmm.
two of clubs, and
Mm-hmm.
ace of diamond.
Ace of clubs, two of clubs, ace of diamonds, and of course you got queen of spades, queen of hearts.
Right.
Yep.
And then it checks to the button, and the button makes a smallish bet of $60. Then after that, it folds to me, and seeing how it's a paired board, there's two clubs, and the button's the one who made the bet,
Uh-huh.
and it folded to me. And since I had pocket queens, I made the call to see what develops on the turn.
Let me ask you a question here. Chang, right? Chang?
Yes.
So if somebody else calls, so let's say the button bets 60 and then one of the limpers calls or one of the blinds call, what do you do?
I'd probably fold thinking that either one of the two has an ace at least.
Right. I mean, there is a flush draw out there, but you have to defend a lot tighter multi-way. So
Right.
I think that's definitely the right answer. And I think here yeah, you probably have to call. And it'll be interesting to see what sort of develops because if the kid's wearing a backpack, one of the first things that's going to go through my head is how often does he have an ace here on the button that's not three bet off? Maybe sometimes, but when you start to think about the quality of ace that flats in this configuration, so it's like limp, limp, raise, and he just calls. You raise from the cutoff and he just calls. I start to think, all right, what kind of aces would play it this way? Maybe like ace 10 off, maybe some small suited aces. And the reason why I think that that's relevant is if he continues to put pressure on you,
Hmm.
especially for large sizing, is he doing that with ace three across like all three streets? That's just thinking ahead a little bit. That's how I would
Right.
think about this. All right, so you call. The pot is 270 and your head's up, right?
Right. And then one thing to note is that around like an hour ago or so,
Mm-hmm.
I saw him make what I believe was a bluff attempt at a middle-aged Asian guy. And when I kind of looked at him, his throat was giving kind of a tell, or it was beating, and you can notice it right away.
That's interesting. I mean, I'm not really one for. I'm not huge into live tells, but I think when they talk about when you take a look at sort of live tell books or Zach Elwood or Mike Carroll, the old school stuff, usually that throbbing usually indicates strength normally, not because it's a adrenaline thing as opposed to a bluff where someone's trying to stay still. But anyways, all right,
Yeah,
so
for
let's go to
me,
the turn.
usually when I'm bluffing, it happens, and then when I'm not bluffing, it kind of happens, kind of doesn't. But
Oh,
yeah,
oh,
the turn
interesting.
comes the nine of clubs.
So the front
So
door comes in.
right,
Okay.
and the button makes a bet of $110.
So you check
Right.
and the button bets 110.
Hmm.
So you don't have the queen of clubs here, right?
Right. So I looked at my cards. I unblocked the queen of clubs, and but at the same time, it might be completely wrong, but I just felt like betting after the club comes in on a paired board felt kind of weird.
Well, unless he was betting a flush draw on the flop, right? Like
Right.
what I mean, what are the two hands that he's betting on the flop? A flush draw or an ace?
And
Now,
right.
now you can say that he wouldn't always bet a flush draw into three people. I mean, if I put myself in this guy's spot, let's say I flat called you with like 7, 8 of clubs or something like that, right? Didn't three bet or
Mhm.
some very speculative holding 5, 7 of clubs, and we get this flop action where there's two people in the blind, or there's a guy in the blind, and there's two limpers, and then there's you. So I've got four people in front of me. If I'm on the button with like 7, 8 of clubs, 5, 7 of clubs, and it gets checked to me on the flop on ace deuce ace, I'm gonna be taking a card a lot because I
Yeah.
don't want to, because all those guys have naturally checked to you, and I don't want to get blown off really my hand. So I
Right.
might be taking a card a lot. So I don't necessarily know if it's just a given that he's betting a flush draw. With that being said, though, if I had like ace 10 or like ace 8 suited and you check called the flop, I might bet it the turn again too, because I might think that you have a high pair. Usually you're not going to check an ace. So it's not super scary to me that you to bet the turn. Now it's different if I bet the flop with like ace 8 suited, somebody in the blind called, and then you overcalled, and then the turn was a flush card. Yeah, I'm not going to bet the turn now. Someone's going to have a flush draw. You're the pre-flop raiser though, so I don't think it's as crazy as it sounds. He
Right.
bets 110 into 270, so the pot's 380. I mean, it's probably very close with the sizing. I mean, the theory would go that you're going to, if you had the queen of clubs in your hand, you continue,
Right.
and here with queens no club, you don't. Now, the more he sort of sizes down, the more you can continue. Like if you bet 90 or 80, and then if you bet like say 200, you're definitely going to fold. So it's kind of in between. I mean, I still sort of lean towards a fold without the queen of clubs here.
Right.
But
So what ended up happening was my thought process was if he was on the button five ways, he probably wouldn't make the $60 bet with a club draw since you'd probably want to take a free card. And since the club draw came in and then now he's actually no, that would make sense. But anyway, I just went with the tell of his throat was kind of going off.
I'm just saying that
And
all I'm going to say is that it wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't have a flush here, but it also wouldn't surprise me though if he does have an ace, because if I put myself in
Mhm.
his spot, I would bet again here with an ace, given the way that this has
Right.
gone, where you as the pre-flop raiser have check called. So
Mhm.
sounds to me like you called.
Yeah, I did end up making the call
So now the
just to see
pot
what.
is 490, right?
Right.
Okay.
And the river comes a ten of spades. And I checked to him, and he
Okay.
bets half the pot, so 240.
So what
And
what bluffs does he have here?
that's what I was thinking too, and that's why I kind of wanted to call in, since
Okay.
it was kind of like the degenerate side of me that didn't want to fold pocket queens.
Uh-huh.
And at the same time, I guess it's like a gut feeling that he was kind of weak. And the fact that I saw him bluffing uh, a three bet pot around an hour ago. So a combination of that led me to
Let me say, well, before you tell us what to do, before you tell us what to do, Chang. I don't know what the result is. Sometimes people get reinforced with bad, necessarily, they might get reinforced bad decisions based upon the outcome, and it can work the other way around too. But I think you highlight where some people take a little bit of information and they misconstrue it. And I'm not talking about the live pulse tell, but what you just said. Well, I saw this guy bluff in a 3-bet pot. Here's a reason why I would tend to think that this line, unless the guy is totally clueless, is less of a bluff. It really goes back to the flop play. Like, is he going to airball bluff after you check into the big blind and 2 limpers that have naturally checked to you on the flop? They're just naturally checking to you on the flop. Is that the time that he's going to take 5-6 of diamonds for a bluff into 4 people? So when you ask yourself that, and then you extrapolate down to the river when you're trying to find a bluff, it's like you have to look at the entire hand. It's not like it was heads up. He would have to have started with an airball bluff on the flop. So the things don't necessarily add up here for me for this to really be a bluff, 1 out of 3 times. The most important being the flop play. But okay, so he bets 240. What did you do?
I ended up making the call after around like 2 to 3 minutes. And the main reason I guess I made the call is I can just tell his throat was throbbing a lot. Like, it was really noticeable. And looking back, and when I made bluffs, that's what would happen to me.
That's interesting because, I'm not a live tells guru. My understanding, though, is that normally when people point to sort of a pulsing, that means they're strong, but I could be wrong. So what was the result?
So I made the call, and then he quickly flipped over pocket 5s.
Pocket 5s, just like no red 5s. I guess it doesn't matter what the suits are. I mean, okay. I guess you could make the case where he was trying to make a protection bet on the flop.
Right.
And then he just starts to turn his hand into a bluff. I guess. I mean, yeah. I guess that makes a little bit of sense. With maybe right, with the club being a little bit superior to not having a club, but I don't know. Like I said, I think you should probably be folding the turn.
Right.
To be honest with you.
That's why I kind of wanted to get your opinion on this, since it felt like a good play, but at the same time, it's probably something that turned into a good play, and that's what made me feel like it was a good play.
Did he look at you like you were nuts?
No, not really. It was just a good hand, and then next hand, move on. Yeah.
Okay. Well, appreciate the call. Thank you very much. If you like what you've seen here, please hit the subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this call-in hand, hit the like button down below. To check out crushlivepoker.com, click on the link in the description. Use the code YTA300 to get the first 30 days for free.